Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Uh, it's always a pleasure to hear Dr. Parulekar speak, and it's a very tall order for me to follow it. But after those five S's and the three C's, I will endeavor to focus your attention on matters military. And this seminar that the St. John's has organized offers you a beautiful glimpse of how all these matters are intertwined and is all going to make a difference in each and everyone's life. So, this session on sea power and security seems to me a natural progression of the age-old adage that flag follows the trade. Indeed, it is now unequivocally clear that India was, is, and will remain a maritime nation, not just due to its favorable maritime geography, but also due to the centrality of the maritime spaces to our history, economy, culture, and global engagement. While our northern frontiers may limit our exchange with the outside world, but the vast oceans on the three sides, with a coastline of over 11,000 kilometers, offer us a boundless canvas opening an ocean of opportunities. This maritime orientation is now increasingly acknowledged at the highest levels of national leadership, just as the chair alluded to. The Honorable Raksha Mantri's word encapsulate this paradigm shift, and I quote, "We were once known as a landlocked country with seashores, but now we are seen as an island country with land borders," unquote. As we look to become the third largest economy by the end of this decade, the seas will remain our engines for growth. Almost 90% of India's trade by volume and 68% by value moves via the sea. Of the remaining 32%, the bulk arises from the services sector, which in turn depends on global internet data, 99% of which is flowing through the undersea submarine cables. Further, over 88% of India's energy needs are seaborne. India is the third largest producer of fish. We are the third largest provider of seafarers globally. 30% of our population resides in coastal districts, contributing nearly 25% of the national GDP. This confluence of geography, demography, and economy reaffirms a simple truth that India's destiny is maritime. History and economy apart, we are the only nation in the world to have an ocean named after her, and there can be no better attestation to our maritime character. As the principal manifestation of India's maritime power, the Indian Navy acts both as a custodian and a catalyst, custodian of safety and security, and catalyst of India's progress and prosperity enabled by the seas. Before delving into the Indian Navy's expanding role, it is essential to understand the region we are operating in. The term Indo-Pacific carries varying geographic interpretations. India views it as stretching from the eastern coast of Africa to the western seaboard of the Americas, while the US defines it from its Pacific coastline to the Indian Ocean. But more than a set of coordinates, the Indo-Pacific is a strategic idea, an evolving geopolitical and economic space where two oceans merge into a single interlinked theater. At the heart of this construct lies India, uniquely positioned by geography and destiny. The Indo-Pacific emerged in the early 21st century as a successor to the narrower Asia-Pacific narrative, which excluded India and underplayed the Indian Ocean significance. But India's central location and robust maritime geography place it in a position of both opportunity and responsibility. Understanding this evolving strategic theater compels India to look beyond the immediate shorelines into the wider Indo-Pacific and even further into the Arctic and Antarctic. In this context, forays into the Indo-Pacific by the Indian Navy are not merely desirable, but essential. To fully grasp the significance of these forays, we must address four fundamental questions. And I'm not following Dr. Parulekar, but these are the what, why, whither, and how. What essentially defines these naval forays? Why deals with reasons to continue them? Whither focuses on the key geographies that shape their trajectory, and how explains the ways in which the Indian Navy executes these forays to secure national interests and contribute to regional stability. Let us first begin with the what. Forays in naval parlance refer to deliberate strategic deployments that go beyond the routine patrols of coastal security deployments. The key components of these forays include a presence and surveillance deployments in critical maritime theaters, joint exercises with regional extra navies, port calls and naval diplomacy, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief missions, and surveillance patrols for maritime domain awareness. Collectively, they safeguard the sea lines of communications, deter adversaries, shape regional norms, and project India as a preferred security partner. Of historical relevance, and this we have adequately covered in the morning sessions, 2025 marks the 1,000 years of Rajendra Chola's first overseas naval foray, which extended influence deep into Southeast Asia. This legacy has only grown over the years. In fact, as we speak today, at this very hour, the Eastern Fleet of the Indian Navy is deployed in the South China Sea, conducting bilateral exercises with Vietnam and Philippines and undertaking presence cum surveillance missions. I wonder why I'm being reminded of the Kautilyan principle that every neighboring state is an enemy and the enemy is a friend. In a world of shifting alliances and contested waters, collaborative maritime engagement is essential to maintaining influence and safeguarding interests. With the what in focus, it's time to examine the why, understanding the strategic drivers behind the Indian Navy's forays. The transition from the Asia-Pacific to the Indo-Pacific has brought India from the periphery to the center of global geopolitics. This vast maritime domain stretching from East Africa to the Western Pacific is where over 60% of the global GDP is generated and 50% of the global trade transits through critical choke points. Strategic powers like the US, China, Japan, and Australia shape the regional security architecture. This is also the same region where the US vision of a free and open Indo-Pacific contrasts sharply with China's assertive maritime strategy, marked by territorial claims in the South China Sea, militarization of the artificial islands therein, growing naval presence and establishment of overseas bases, including in Myanmar, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Djibouti, and the latest being Ream in Cambodia. Clearly, China aspires to be not just a Pacific power, but also an Indian Ocean power, directly affecting our maritime calculus. Now, while China's assertive posture and naval expansion remain the most pressing strategic concern, underscored by its militarization, gray zone tactic, and growing footprints, we are also facing a wider spectrum of both traditional and non-traditional threats. Pakistan is significantly upgrading its naval capabilities with the Chinese assistance. It is acquiring the 8 Hangor-class diesel-electric submarines with the AIPs, the Babar-class corvettes, and advanced maritime surveillance systems, aiming to bolster its second strike capability. The Strait of Hormuz handles roughly 20% of the global petroleum shipments, making it one of the world's most critical choke points. Iran's periodic confrontations with the Western Navy, especially in the light of tension with Israel and the US forces, have increased instability in the region, with the potential to threaten global energy security and disrupt our crude import routes. Piracy, especially around the Horn of Africa and the Gulf of Guinea, has seen a resurgence even as the Somali piracy temporarily declined. Incidents of maritime terrorism, narco trafficking, arms smuggling, and illegal, unreported, and unregulated, or the IUU fishing, particularly by distant water fishing fleets, pose constant challenges to maritime governance, especially for nations with vast exclusive economic zones like ours. The impact of climate change is particularly acute in the Indo-Pacific. The rising sea levels threaten low-lying nations such as the Maldives, while increased frequency of cyclones and extreme weather events disrupt port infrastructure and coastal security. For India, this necessitates not just traditional naval power, but the humanitarian assistance and disaster relief capability, climate surveillance, and maritime scientific collaboration. Having established the why, we now turn to the whither, the key geographies that shape the trajectory of our naval forays. India's maritime strategy hinges on safeguarding its immediate and extended maritime neighborhood while projecting presence in emerging frontiers such as the Arctic and the Antarctic, which are becoming increasingly strategic due to climate change, great power competition, and shifting trade routes. The Malacca Strait, through which nearly 40% of the global trade and 80% of China's oil imports pass, is one of the world's most critical choke points. The Indian Navy's mission-based deployments in this region ensure a 24/7 surveillance and rapid response capability across shipping lanes, vital for energy and trade flows. India's contribution with regional partners such as Thailand, Indonesia, and Singapore has enhanced the maritime domain awareness through real-time information sharing. India actively participates in the multilateral and bilateral naval exercises such as the Malabar with the Americans, Japan, and Australia, JIMEX with Japan, AUSINDEX with Australia, and RIMPAC. Engagements with Vietnam and the Philippines, including port calls and capacity building initiatives, reinforce India's commitment to a rules-based maritime order. India is enhancing strategic partnership with island relations like Fiji, Tonga, and Samoa, as well as with France through the Reunion Island, recognizing their significance in controlling sea lines and oceanic spaces. The establishment of logistics agreements and support to the maritime surveillance programs in Mauritius and Seychelles enables us to project a friendly and stabilizing naval presence across the southern and southwest Pacific. With China maintaining a permanent military base in Djibouti and expanding influence through the Belt and Road Initiative, our forays include joint EEZ surveillance and HADR drills with Kenya, Tanzania, Mozambique, and Madagascar, and strengthening presence at Lakshadweep and building deeper ties with the UAE and Iran, both key logistical hubs in the Western Indian Ocean. The Northern Sea Route, or the NSR, now open for longer durations due to the polar ice melt, reduces the shipping distance between Europe and Asia by 40%, presenting new economic and strategic opportunities. We've responded through establishment of the Himadri, through the Himadri Research Station in Svalbard, Norway since 2008, the Observer Status in the Arctic Council since 2013, participating in climate and policy forums, and training naval personnel for cold sea operations. Our commitment to peaceful exploration on the Antarctic Treaty System is supported by operational bases which include Maitri and Bharati, enabling year-round research. Hydrographic surveys and logistical support provided by the Navy for expeditions and operations have also had far-reaching effects. Thus, our naval forays are no longer confined to our backyard. They are expansive, purposeful, and deeply interwoven with the changing architecture of global geopolitics. And having explored where our naval energies are focused from the Indian Ocean to the Arctic and Antarctic, the question that naturally follows is, how do we translate this into an expansive maritime vision? And that answer lies in a robust and evolving framework. And I'm again taking a leaf of the chair's formula, but I am coming with 3 Ds, and that is deter, deploy, and develop. The first is deter, and I'll request you not to ring the bell because I think we are a speaker short, so I think we can enjoy this session a little bit more. Deter, ladies and gentlemen, credible deterrence begins with persistence presence. Our mission-based deployments in key maritime zones ensure that the Indian Navy is always on station, watching, responding, and shaping the environment. We have conducted over 1,000 MBD patrols annually, covering choke points in high-traffic sea lanes that are critical for both national and global trade. The exercises like the Tropics, which is the theater-level, operational-level exercise, and Sea Vigil, a coastal security exercise that does involve the Coast Guard, involving all our maritime agencies, test our preparedness across the entire spectrum of conflict, from high-intensity warfare to grey zone operations. This is the Sea Vigil that I was talking about. Our deterrent posture now includes multi-domain warfare capabilities in addition to unmanned systems, underwater drones, autonomous surveillance platforms, and the ISR, that is intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance assets. The second pillar is deploy. Deployment is not just about deterrence, it's about delivering security where it is needed the most. And I love this line that a Navy that does not deploy is a Navy that does not deter. India's sea lines of communications underpin a 3.7 trillion economy, and operational deployments ensure that the uninterrupted flow of commerce and energy. In the past year alone, we have escorted over 324 merchant vessels, securing cargo valued at over 5.3 billion, and rescued more than 400 personnel in operations ranging from anti-piracy missions of Somalia to evacuations from conflict zones like the Sudan under Operation Kaveri. From HADR operations during cyclones of the Bay of Bengal to the swift deployment of naval assets to the Red Sea and polar regions, our forces are visible, responsible, and reliable. The third pillar, develop, is perhaps the most strategic of all, and it is about shaping the maritime environment through cooperation, capacity building, and sustained engagement. Initiatives like the Indian Ocean ship Sagar bring together 9 Indian Ocean nations in a coordinated deployment and dialogue strengthening shared security. The IKMA exercise, a new multilateral initiative involving 10 East African navies, is fostering interoperability and trust along the Western Indian Ocean, a region increasingly vulnerable to Chinese influence. Naval diplomacy is at the forefront. We have conducted over 50 port visits in the past 18 months from Suva to Seychelles, Jakarta to Jeddah, reinforcing our maritime partnerships across the Indo-Pacific. The Indian Navy in early 2026, next year, is set to host a multinational exercise, Milan, the International Fleet Review, and the IONS Conclave of Chiefs at the beautiful city of Destiny, Visakhapatnam, from where I'm coming, where the participation is expected from more than 100 countries, and I'm sure quite a few present here would love to be a part of that wonderful gathering. Ladies and gentlemen, from the Bay of Bengal to the icy reaches of the Arctic and Antarctica, the Indian Navy today reflects our emergence as a maritime power with global responsibility. As we look forward towards India at 2047, our goal is clear: to ensure oceans remain secure, open, and inclusive for India and the world. The Navy stands combat-ready, credible, cohesive, and future-ready across the surface, subsurface, air, cyber, and polar domains. With purpose, professionalism, and presence, the Indian Navy remains committed to protecting national interests, anytime, anywhere, anyhow. Thank you.